Hello and welcome back to the Happy Running Podcast. My name's Drew. I'm an amateur runner in Flagstaff, Arizona. Today I'm going to talk about how to build endurance, specifically what to incorporate into each week in order to be able to run faster for longer. The longer the distance, usually that is a slower pace, and the shorter the distance, usually that's a faster pace. But most of these aerobic events can be pretty short or they can be extremely long as an ultramarathon or as short as a mile race or even an 800-meter race. Many of those events are all primarily aerobic events. So even something where you need a lot of power, like a mile, is still primarily driven by your aerobic system, even though that anaerobic ability still comes into play significantly during the race. So your running endurance matters because no matter what you're training for, you're going to be using your aerobic system to power your muscles over the distance of whichever event you're doing. It matters for all different types of runners because if you are a larger runner or a smaller runner, you're still going to need to build that aerobic engine to push your body over whatever distance you're covering. So some of the key elements that you want to incorporate into a plan are going to be longer endurance-based runs. So that could be something that's somewhat moderate in intensity or even easy in intensity. Generally, a long run is going to be a significant percentage of your weekly mileage. So maybe that's like 20 to 30% of your total mileage. If you're running 100 miles a week, 20% of that mileage might be 20 miles, that's pretty fair. You might even go a little bit longer. If you're only running a shorter distance over the course of that week, then I wouldn't go off of percentages. So you kind of have to build up to a long run over time, but you'll get a feel for what your body's able to do by doing gradual increases over the course of your training plan. So we'll come back to long runs. Long runs are a key component. Another is threshold running. So this is kind of a buzzword, anaerobic threshold. You have different thresholds at which lactic acid starts building up in your muscles. That can be measured through a lactate meter, which can be purchased online if you feel like doing that. Most people don't want to pay hundreds of dollars for a lactate meter to measure the amount of lactate in millimoles per I think it's deciliter. Correct me on that, but whatever that measurement is, it doesn't really matter to your average runner. Professionals will dial in. They might be looking after their LT1 numbers in a workout. That's the first point at which the lactate begins to build up in your muscles and start increasing at a significant rate. So you measure your effort in a threshold run based on how tired your body's starting to feel. And generally that is like a comfortably hard type session. So again, we'll come back to threshold running as well. And another is efficiency runs. So I consider anything that builds skill and efficiency as something that's going to be really positive for your body's ability to endure, not because you're specifically building your aerobic system up, but because you're building your body's ability to run efficiently, use energy efficiently over the course of that distance. So that's more of a skill building exercise, skill and strength. Volume is also a key component. Your overall running volume is going to be very important in building aerobic endurance. If you can run 50, 60 miles per week, something that's considered higher mileage for your average runner, you're going to just be constantly building up that easy run volume in order to get up to that higher mileage. That easy run volume builds the mitochondria in your cells. It builds up your body's ability to shuttle oxygen to your muscles in order to fuel your exercise. So that is another very key component. So we've got long runs, threshold runs, building up your running skills and efficiency, and then also your overall volume, easy run volume, but also that incorporates your workout volume. All of these things put together create one awesome weekly plan that will help you get better at running and be able to run faster for a longer distance. Let's talk a little bit about long runs. Long runs, really, there's no hard and fast rule like that 20 to 30% of weekly volume. A lot of people will throw that out there as a starting place. With any runner, I would like to start with really understanding what their longest run is to date and then just slowly building that endurance over time. So that's for someone who has never run 10 miles before, that means we're getting them from maybe their daily 3-mile run. And on the weekend, we're going to slowly build up to 10 miles, 13 miles, 15 miles, whatever they need to be able to run in order to complete the distance that they're training for. That slow progressive overload is a core principle of any exercise plan. So if you're training just to lose weight, if you are doing strength and weightlifting, if you're doing any sort of like sports training, progressive overload is a general rule that applies, and running is no different to that. So you want to slowly stress your body over time in order to build up to whatever that total volume is. Some people like to run long, slow distance runs. For myself, I think there's a place for long, slow distance, but since I'm generally training for a marathon or a half marathon, even at some of those shorter distance runs like a 10K or a 5K, I feel like I've really benefited from a more moderate intensity on a lot of my long runs. So I like to call that kind of a steady long run, steady, easy. That can be anything where your heart rate on a normal easy run, zone 1 or low zone 2, for me, that's like anywhere from 100 beats per minute up to 130 is like a general easy run. On my long runs, maybe I start at 120 and I go up to something that might be more characteristic of a workout or like a low end threshold run. But my heart rate's not getting high, the intensity is not that high. It's just over time, that moderate intensity over a really long duration gets your body to work really hard, really stimulates your aerobic system, and I feel like I get really great gains from that. So that kind of like easy to moderate long run is really key. If you're training for a marathon or a half marathon, you're gonna need to throw in some race specific stuff, real intensity into those long runs. And some people stop at, if they're training for a marathon, they might stop at marathon intensity. I don't like to do that. Throw in some really hard efforts within that long run. I feel like you can get some really great gains from that. But if we're speaking basics, build up that long run over time. Get to a point where you're able to complete really long distances on a regular basis. Every single week, you should incorporate some type of long run. Some are going to be longer at certain parts of your training cycle. Some are going to be shorter. Generally, you need something in that like 90-minute range each week in order to get that stimulus of a long run. Jumping into threshold. Threshold running is something, if you talk to any professional, pretty much any professional runner will incorporate some level of threshold training where the intensity of the run is not going to be high enough where the intensity is the thing that stops them from completing the run. The duration of that moderate to high moderate intensity is going to be the limiting factor. So if you don't have a lactate meter, you can't say, oh, I'm at 1.8 millimoles or I'm at 4 millimoles of lactate. You can't really tell what that like scientific measurement of your lactate is. However, over time, by doing these types of workouts, you should be in like between like a 5 to 7 range out of 10. Sometimes toward the end of a workout, you might be at like an 8. But you really don't want to cross into the 9 or 10 out of 10 range. So try and feel what a maximal effort workout feels like and what a truly easy run feels like. Start really, really conservative. I start some of my threshold runs at an intensity that feels almost too easy for that workout. But then by the second rep, I can usually dial that in. The thing you don't want to do is go out really hard at the beginning of a workout, build up a bunch of lactate in your muscles to the point that you lose the purpose of the workout, which is to teach your body to not build up so much lactate and to be able to shuttle that lactate out of your muscles quickly so that you're able to sustain and ride that threshold. So like right on that line of where is the point where my body's crossing over into rapid accumulation of lactate during the workout. For most people, it can be very challenging to find this, but generally start at a 5 out of 10. Don't let your body go faster than a 5 out of 10 and see how much volume you can get at that intensity. So for me, I might be doing somewhere between 4 miles and 10 miles of threshold running within a day. A lot of trained professionals can get upwards of 10, 12, 13 miles of threshold within a day by doing double threshold workouts. That's a threshold run in the morning and a threshold run in the afternoon. Depending on your abilities, you're going to want to start even just at 1 mile. Maybe you're breaking things out depending on on how fast you're running. Some of those reps might be a little bit shorter in duration. So maybe you're not doing mile reps. Maybe you're doing like 8 by 3 minutes. Maybe you're doing 5 by 3 minutes at the beginning. Those 3-minute chunks are still going to be that same effort, and maybe you're taking a 1-minute rest in between. That 1 minute can be walking. Maybe you'll do 2 minutes at a really, really slow jog. But the goal is to stop before your body starts getting that heavy legs feeling, that high heart rate and rapid breathing where you're not able to form sentences, your hands on knees. That's far past what the intensity of this workout should be. Generally, they feel very comfortable for most people. And like I said, the limiting factor is not going to be the intensity generally, but it's going to be the duration of that intensity. As you build up your threshold volume, it's the same kind of progressive overload principle where get to 5 miles of threshold, do that several times a week. Maybe it's even just 3 miles of threshold broken out into half-mile chunks. And if you're running 10-minute miles for your threshold, that means your easy run is going to be probably 13 minutes per mile. That's okay. Maybe that's a jog. Once you start passing that, maybe that's a walk instead of a jog, and that's okay. Over time, just add to that and build up that volume of threshold. Shifting back to efficiency. Efficiency is really important. Why? Why would you want to not work on the skills that are going to make your body more efficient at using energy when you're running? Not use too much in certain areas so that you can conserve and you can save that for later in the race. So building your efficiency means you're probably running fast, you're probably doing a little bit shorter intervals, and that could be, it doesn't even have to be measured, it could just be brief strides or hill strides. Retain some power, work on your running form. A lot of people who have poor running form, those little issues that you have here and there when you're going for a 6-mile jog, those are really going to work themselves out when you're forcing your body to sprint up a hill for 20 seconds, 10 times or 15 times. So by building that efficiency, you're giving your body the ability to run more efficiently at all paces, not just the faster paces. And you're also gaining some power, you're gaining skill in the way that you're running, and that's overall a really good thing to incorporate into any plan. In my own plans, I do that through strides. I do strides at least 2 times a week in between workouts and long runs. Generally, I'll work out Tuesday, Friday, and then I'll do a long run on Saturday. If I'm training for a marathon where there's a little bit higher volume, a lot of fatigue comes from volume and overall aerobic intensity, not so much anaerobic or power, then maybe I'll shift that. I'll do like a Wednesday, Saturday or Wednesday, Sunday plan. Any of those days in between those workouts are like quality session days. You can throw in a few strides, 6 times 10 seconds, 8 times 10 seconds, 6 or 5 times 20 seconds, and you give yourself like a minute rest in between. There's no harm in doing that. Your body's generally going to be able to handle that level of intensity of running, accelerating to a very fast speed, generating a lot of power, and then quickly coming back down. That's okay to incorporate at pretty much any time, but you have to do it slowly. You have to introduce it intentionally and make sure that you're not overreaching with increasing the intensity of your workouts, increasing the volume of those workouts, and then also throwing in strides. That might be too much. Do it intentionally, focus on one thing to add into your plan, and then make sure that you're monitoring how your body is responding to those different stimuli. And then lastly, your overall volume is going to be really, really important. More and more, I'm seeing people that I know or just as a sports fan, following the training of a lot of professionals who are running extremely high volume. Maybe that's 110 miles a week, maybe it's 120, maybe it's 130. That 110 to 130 is becoming a lot more common. And then you have people like Cam Levins who run 160 miles a week, I've seen, which is absolutely wild. That's like 3 runs a day a lot of times in order to find the time for that and allow for recovery. Obviously, your average runner is not going to be running 160 miles a week or 120 miles a week or 100 miles a week. You're probably going to be running 15 to 30 for a beginner who is really, really taking it on. That's okay. Increase progressive overload. Make sure that you're slowly and intentionally introducing more volume. Don't introduce too much volume at any given time. I like the Strava chart to generally look like a slow increase over time and then a slow plateauing and a quick come down for a race. Sometimes for me, I break things out into different chunks. So based on whatever race I'm training for at any given time, I'll take the example of I came back from a little bit of a break in the winter. Spring, I built up over time to about 70, 75 miles a week, held that for a month or so, month and a half, come down a little bit because I had some injury, but I also was focusing on increasing my intensity, my efficiency and power, training for a race that was a mile. So big shift in building up volume, coming back from injury, kind of just having fun doing whatever I wanted to mile training. A lot higher intensity in the middle of the week, a little bit less focus on the long run, but still throw that in there. And now I'm shifting back to longer distance. I'm training for half marathons. So I'm bringing that back up relatively quickly. So I'm jumping back into about 70 to 80 miles a week because I'm really focusing on a lot of that longer, more moderate intensity work and just overall volume, because the half marathon and marathon are so aerobically focused versus a mile, which still benefits a lot from tons of aerobic work, but has a lot of power, and that's kind of a weakness of mine. I had to focus on that. By increasing your volume over time, slowly increasing, plateauing, holding that as long as you can, that means your workouts aren't going to be too stressful to the point where they're inhibiting your ability to hold that volume. It also means that you're incorporating still that threshold running and that long run, a lot of that moderate intensity. And then you can still throw those strides in there because the strides are really important for your efficiency and staying healthy and staying strong in your running. For a marathon, holding your volume at a high volume over a long period of time is going to give you big gains. And most professionals will do that. If you look at most professional Strava accounts, it's going to be that gradual increase and then a hold over time at a lot higher volume. And then you taper, and the point of the taper is, hey, I've got all that aerobic base and strength built up over time. Now it's time for me to focus on my race and utilizing all that fitness. Quick come down allows your body to kind of regroup, repair itself. All the cumulative damage over time starts healing. You start feeling really good. You lose a lot of that overall general fatigue that you've been holding over time, and then you use that strength and that fitness that you built up. So by incorporating these four things, you're going to be able to build that aerobic endurance over a long period of time. And then you're going to want to quickly come down for a taper, and you're going to want to use that in a race. Depending on what that race is, there's different ways to do that. Focus of this talk is just to focus on aerobic endurance and how to utilize it and how to build it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe to this video if you found this useful, but my goal here is just to speak to people like me who've come from not being a runner. I started running about 7 years ago now in 2017, I think. Ran my first marathon in 2019, ran 3:29 for the marathon. And then now my most recent marathon was 2:28. And now I would like to be in the low 220s this year. So really, really worked hard to transform my body and learn a lot of these principles. Now I want to give that back to the people like me because I wasn't able to have all the help that I think I could have had when I was doing that. So appreciate you listening in. Like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time. Happy running.